I am delighted this afternoon to moderate our panel on educational partnerships and initiatives. Rockefeller, SUNY ESF, and the entire SUNY system is well aware of the important role educational institutions play in their communities. They are early adopters and promoters of sustainable solutions. They serve as a trusted source of expertise and facilitate important community conversations. And so today we're going to learn about 3 innovative programs that show the wide range of leadership roles education institutions can play in these important community discussions. We can see the multifaceted resources that are going to be useful as we attempt to transform our communities and support our citizens through the ever-changing environment. So our first speaker today is going to be talking about libraries as sustainability partners. She is Rebecca Smith-Aldrich. She's the Executive Director of the Mid-Hudson Library System and President of the Sustainable Libraries Initiative. Rebecca?
All right. Thank you, Laura. So I just want to thank everyone for hanging out after lunch. I know sometimes it's, got that dip after lunch, but you guys are hanging in there. Have an extra cookie if you need it to get through the rest of my presentation, at least. I am the Executive Director of the Mid-Hudson Library System that covers Columbia, Greene, Dutchess, Putnam, and Ulster counties, just over 650,000 people served in that region. But I have a abiding passion for the idea of climate action and libraries as catalysts in our communities and what we can do as leaders in our communities throughout New York State, the country, and actually the world at this point in the work that we've been doing through the Sustainable Libraries Initiative. So just a show of hands, anyone love their library? All right, here you go, you're not alone. Right, there's over 16,500 public libraries in the United States, and over 68% of Americans, this is pre-pandemic numbers, are library users. I'm just talking about public libraries. We're not touching on school libraries or academic libraries at this point. So when we think about the prevalence of libraries throughout our country, and in particular here in New York State, we have a very rich history of libraries. Some of the oldest libraries in the country are here in New York, 2 of which are in my system. I have the 2 oldest libraries, both in terms of buildings and legacy. But when you think about how often you see a library, you pass that little library sign, you're like, oh yeah, isn't that cute? There's a library in this town. We are everywhere, right? There are libraries in every village, every town, every county throughout this state. We are a trusted presence in our communities. We have very high trust equity. The CSCA poll had us right underneath nurses, so we're pretty proud of that. So when we think about the infodemic that we really suffered through during the COVID pandemic in the first year, people really struggling to find factual information, many turn to trusted information professionals such as libraries. So when we think about the stature of libraries in our communities, they really can be a catalyst for many good things and have been for hundreds of years. From early literacy skills to digital adoption in our communities, they're actually usually the most tech-savvy institutions in your community, believe it or not. I don't think we have that reputation, but if you start to dig a little bit, you'll find out that to be true. So as we look at New York State, you have 758 public libraries throughout the state. And New York State libraries have a reputation now, actually globally, as being early adopters on the topics of sustainability and climate change. We are the genesis for the national movement at the American Library Association to adopt sustainability as a core value of our profession. And now we see major work happening across this country using libraries as demonstration sites for both climate mitigation choices in the built environment, as well as service and program design that civically engage people with the topic at a trusted institution in their own neighborhood. So when we think about libraries, we are part of the state education department. We are open to everyone. There's no price of admission. We don't care what kind of education level you have. We don't care what your background is. You are welcome to come into our institution and use the resources and use the library as a platform to do what you want to do as an individual, as a family, and as a neighborhood. So we really think of libraries as empowerment engines. For any Harry Potter fans in the room, we are like the room of requirement in every community across the state. We can be what you need us to be based on local conditions. So the quote used earlier in the event today that all politics is local if we don't have grassroots buy-in to what the particular issues are to our locality, to mobilize and motivate people to work together, to find common solutions to our problems, we are at a deficit in our communities. So libraries are a critical co-creator in finding those solutions and bringing together people who wouldn't normally perhaps socialize together or communicate with one another, and how to solve the problems of their own communities. So libraries in some ways are a great equalizer because they provide great equity and access to information and to the people of the community in a nonpartisan environment, which is a very valuable thing these days in our country. So we've adopted the idea from Project Drawdown that every job needs to be a climate job. Given the enormity of the shift in the economics and the thinking of our world that need to happen to combat climate change, we all have to assume responsibility in our own spheres of influence of how we are going to help in this situation. This conference is a great example of everyone taking responsibility and doing what we can from where we sit with our authority, with our power structures, and our influence to make a difference on these topics. That's the step one, right? But we've got to have collective action going in the right direction and pulling in the same direction. So as a profession, we've been working to educate our library leaders throughout the country, and particularly here in New York State, about sustainability. And so the adoption of sustainability as a core value has changed the nature of how we're doing strategic planning for libraries, facility planning, and financial planning for libraries across the state. So in the Sustainable Library Initiative, we adopted the triple bottom line definition of sustainability because we kept running up against this idea that we're just talking about green and not understanding the complex systemic societal issues that we're really touching on here. As the conservationist John Muir said, once you tug on any thread in the universe, you find it connected to everything else, and then you get paralyzed because you're like, oh my God, this is so huge. What am I supposed to do here? So what we've been doing is helping libraries understand that there needs to be a cultural, an organizational, and mindset shift happening in our institutions. So we're coaching libraries from the inside out to make better decisions, from what office paper they buy, to what buildings they build, to what services they provide to the community, to what collections they build, and what programs they're offering, using this as a framework for decision making. And this has resulted in both small and massive changes across libraries that we've been working with. Here in New York in particular, but now across the state, we have a very large group of libraries working in this manner. So this might produce very typical activities you would assume a library would do, from a statewide book club using Project Drawdown to have community conversations about climate solutions in our communities. This was a scalable program we did partnering with the international company Overdrive to provide free copies of this book to everyone in the state, which was pretty exciting, but we were a little ahead of our time. It wasn't quite at that tipping point where most Americans were believing that climate change was really an issue they should be paying attention to. But as we move forward, we're now focused more in the local aspect of this work. This is a project in my own system called the Library of Local, where we've designated specific libraries as community resilience hubs. They have specialized collections, seed libraries, tool lending libraries, and then most importantly, in my opinion, collections of people, local experts who are experts in gardening, food preservation, climate action solutions, that they are coming and actually becoming part of the human collection in a library. So it's not just the books in our shelves and the articles in our databases, but the people in our community who have expertise and passion in these areas. And libraries provide that hub to connect people with that expertise, just as they do in information through books and databases and the traditional model of library lending models as well. So we're very excited about this, and we've overlaid these locations with climate-smart communities in New York State to find the nexus of other people who are passionately working on these topics and understanding that the library has resources to offer. So we're super proud we evolved this program this year, so now the sites actually have technology that civic groups can borrow, bullhorns if you need to get the word out in a new way. So we're really thinking creatively about what collections look like in our libraries to manifest climate action throughout communities that are really focused on this in an organized manner, so that libraries are co-creators in those solutions that are coming out of these communities. So there's so much going on. I know I'm going to respect the 10-minute mark, but dude, I could talk like all day about this. I'm sure you can tell already. But here in northern Onondaga, right here in the center part of the state, the library used some of its own property to create a library farm. So you can use your library card and borrow a plot of land to grow your own food. So we start thinking about the climate justice aspect of climate action work, and we start to think about where's the equity in some of the choices that we're making. You know, libraries are called the people's university for a good reason, because everyone has access to them. So when we think about food justice issues, from transportation to food security, libraries are a great gap filler to think about how to get solutions into the hands of people, as well as having people exposed to technology and ideas and opportunities to have more justice in the work we do in the area of climate action. Eco-literacy programs, repair cafes, libraries are a very popular place to host those, and they really do manifest the whole idea of a regenerative community where we're putting energy back into the systems that we draw from. So I know someone else talked about repair cafes, so I won't spend too much time there, but libraries are also becoming hubs for acute disaster preparedness work. From respecting the work of our first responder communities who are under more pressure given the severity and the frequency and nature of severe weather, to helping homeowners and families get ready for the inevitability of what's happening thanks to climate change. Decarbonization, of course, we're seeing this in library facilities, transportation choices, and building onto the EV infrastructure throughout our communities. With one of our favorite success stories here in New York in Suffolk County, the county is partnering with the county library system to build the EV charging infrastructure. County fleet vehicles will be charged overnight in library parking lots through the EV charging infrastructure in library properties where library patrons and community members also can access that technology. So that build out that's necessary going through all those hubs in every community throughout the state is pretty smart down there in Suffolk County. So this is what we're really working on, the idea of building trusted, strong, authentic institutions that are focused both on climate change mitigation and climate change adaptation simultaneously, which has been a hard pill to swallow for many people. These are our products that we've developed for free for our member libraries and the libraries throughout the country at this point. They have a proven methodology to use the triple bottom line across operations and service and program design. So I just wanted to share my contact info because I love talking to people like you and what you're up to. So I just wanted to make sure you had that info. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Our next speaker is Susan Fassler, who is the Director of Sustainable Operations here at SUNY ESF, and she's going to be discussing Innovations in Sustainable Procurement, a campus green purchasing guide's role in achieving buy-in and mandatory procurement standards. Susan.
Thank you. That sounds like a riveting topic, right? Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I'm not sure if they're still in the room, but I also want to give a huge thank you to Emily and Bailey for they put so much work into this, so everyone should thank them when they see them. Yes, so my name is Sue Fassler. I'm the Director of Sustainable Operations here at ESF, and you will see Delaney Demrow, her name on the slide as well. Delaney put together a lot of the work that I'm presenting today, so she deserves a lot of thanks and gratitude. She put together the Green Purchasing Guide when she was a grad student, and we snapped her up as a staff member because she did such a great job. My first question is for the audience. I do not expect anyone to know, besides the one person I talked to earlier, does anyone know what that picture is? Like, what website is that from, that screenshot? I'll be very impressed if anyone knows. It is the Green New York website for Executive Order 4 Green Purchasing Mandates, which we will be talking about. So to drill us down a little bit into ESF, and I think this is going to be applicable to everywhere that you work to. What is our purchasing environment? We are complex. We have a hierarchy that we must follow. We cannot just go discretionary open market and buy whatever we want. There is a process because we're a state institution. We have over 150 people that have credit cards, and you can also purchase through a PO. That's a lot of people to educate. It's a very decentralized process. We also, even though we're ESF, people are more predisposed to want to purchase in the right way and find a green product, but we're like everywhere else. People have 3-4 jobs when they have one job title here. They have limited time to alter their purchasing behavior and their habits. Even if they want to, they do not have the time to start and to research. So enter the mandates. I just learned about Green New York, this executive order, this mandate for green purchasing about a year ago. And that's wild to admit as a sustainability professional at ESF, but if I just learned about it, hazarding a guess, most people on campus and beyond do not know that this exists. So I loved the talk earlier about policy is great, but implementation is even better. So here at ESF, last November, we adopted our green purchasing and break free from plastic policy, which I'm happy to talk more about in detail during the Q&A. Policy, awesome, pat ourselves on the back. I don't so much care about that, even though I helped co-develop it. I want to implement it and figure out how can we do this on campus in a way that is not painful for people, in a way that will make them excited. We also are a leader in collegiate sustainability, as can be referenced through our STARS Platinum ranking, which if you know what that is, we're one of 11 institutions who have achieved this highest ranking in a self-reporting sustainability system. So there's a lot of pressure to perform the way that the general public expects us to be performing. So as I mentioned, Executive Order 4, proof. Look at that little jar of pennies and nickels. So who here, by show of hands, has ever heard of the Green New York purchasing mandate? Okay, we got 3-4 people. Yes, so we as a state institution and many other state agencies have to follow this. And what is this? There are over 75 specifications for very, very specific products. Things like batteries, washing machines, paint. And you are supposed to, as a purchaser, be aware that this exists. You have to understand how to use a specification, and then you, the purchaser, have to do the research to buy this item with very limited understanding and resources. This is my shock and awe slide. This is what one specification looks like. Do you want to read this and understand it and research it? Probably not. So what we did here at ESF to implement our policy, which reiterates our commitment to this mandate and takes it a step further by banning the use of state funds to purchase most single-use plastics on campus. Delaney, with help from Dan, I should mention Dan too, who is here today, created the Green Purchasing Guide, much less scary. They sifted through the purchasing hierarchy, they did the research, and I will tell you in the next two slides, how we created this guide, but basically, it's based upon the items that we know campus already purchases. We did an audit of our purchasing records because we didn't want to put together a resource that would not be directly usable. So we have many different categories. We have a table of contents. You want office supplies? You click it, brings you there. You want copy paper? Click it, brings you to the item, live linked to the product you can actually purchase that has been pre-screened to be a green product. That's a lot easier to sell to the campus community than telling them they have to read through that spec and find it themselves. This guide is now in its second iteration. It's over 100 pages long. It's on our website. I encourage all of you to check it out. It is amazing. We update it 3 or 4 times a year, make sure the links work, and as the campus community learns about this resource, they're like, this just happened last week. A member of our facilities department reached out and said, we need to get some stain and some exterior paint. Can you help us find a product? We're an office of service, which I'll explain in a moment. We helped research, and next time we update the guide, we're going to add that product. So we keep track of what people ask us so we can then share it with others in the future. And this is just another example to give a shout out to here. You'll notice today is a very low waste event. I'm going to pick up all the trash bags later and take a picture of how little waste was produced from this event. The guide also talks about how to do that at other events on campus too. So how do we create this beautiful masterpiece? We reviewed our pre-COVID fiscal year data from our top 10 vendors by dollar amount. And then the guide was created based upon, like I mentioned, those items that are most frequently purchased. We used the Green New York specifications as our guide, but we realized there's only 75 products covered by the guide. We purchase a lot more than these 75 items. So then we used third-party verifications like Green Seal, UL Eco logo, and we did research on those products. But then we also created our own ESF specs that are very much focused on circularity and reuse and durability. So that's kind of the grounding and what every product in that guide is framed within. Why create the guide? Because like a lot of us have said, operational evolution is much greater than policy and intentions. Like George R.R. Martin, Game of Thrones writer says, words are wind. I believe that. I'm sick of hearing happy, good words and intentions. It is time to do something and to create the buy-in to get it done. Of course, as a state agency, sometimes I can hide behind the mandate and say, we got to create this guide, we got to do green purchasing. I don't love it either, but guess we all have to do it. So mandates are helpful sometimes. But also as ESF, we have our sustainability goals. And to me, I've realized now, I've been in this role for 3.5 years, I have redefined how I view sustainability many times. Right now, I view it as systems change. It is everything. It is all-encompassing. It's changing an entire system far beyond just our impact on the environment. It's how we also treat each other. And something at ESF is we're here on our Syracuse campus, but we've got campuses all throughout the state. So for us, it's also another challenge to achieve operational consistency, and that is very applicable for all of us in local governments in achieving consistency throughout the whole state. We also, like we mentioned, we're ESF. Students come in with expectations of us. Faculty members, staff members, the general public, everyone thinks we're doing everything right, and spoiler alert, like I'll share in some of our stats, we are not. But what we're lucky in that our college leadership and our college community wants us to call this out and wants us to talk about it and to be part of the solution. So here in a college environment, we can take risks, we can make mistakes, and we can collaborate together. We launched this guide in March of this year. It's a project of the New York State Center for Sustainable Materials Management. Talked to Kate Walker standing by the door about this amazing multi-million-dollar center through a DEC grant. We recorded our training sessions, which you can see online, and all of our P-card holders were invited. We had campus news announcement. We have integrated it within the business office during their credit card and P-card training, and we have appropriately staffed our Office of Sustainability, and we have fought for funding to create an office as a service. We're not here to tell campus this is what you must do. Good luck, see ya. We're here to say we have staff to help you with this research. We have the technical experts who can help make sure that you're doing things right. And if you didn't budget to change your whole system, we have money to help get you there and help you budget next year to properly account for this. So we very much are being deliberate and being an office of service. Oh, one last slide. The guide remaining evergreen is important. We don't want to have a resource that works for a few months that then becomes obsolete if the links aren't updated and if products aren't added. Right now, we are working with our business office to track compliance with Green New York and our policy. That's the hardest part, is tracking compliance in a decentralized environment. Also, part of the center's main task is to replicate this guide at other campuses and throughout the state at different agencies. So we encourage you, reach out to us, use this. We want this to be a free resource that others can use as a launch pad. And we've partnered with NYSERDA and the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab to do an analysis and see, pre-COVID, what was our percent compliance with Green New York specifications as an environmental school. I will tell you right now, only 14% of the products we purchased were even covered by EO4. Of that 14%, we had a 36% compliance rate. That is not good, but it is fine for us to talk about because that's our baseline. We can see how this guide has helped us improve. And I'll say there is hope, because in looking at these top 10 vendors' compliance, one vendor, Hilliard, had an 85% compliance rate. Guess who signs all the purchase recs and does all the research for that purchasing? Me. I'm someone who's empowered, I care, and I have the research to make it easy for myself. So if we can do that across the campus, we will see the compliance rate jump. So I hope you enjoyed the deep dive into procurement, and I'm very happy to talk more in the Q&A.
Thank you, Susan. I'm always in awe of people who know that much about procurement. Our final presenter in this panel today is Jacob Gadetis. He's coordinator of the Writing Resource Center here at SUNY ESF and co-founder and director of Write Out. And he's going to be presenting today on Engaged Humanities, youth-focused engagement as collective action and coalition building. Jacob?
Thanks so much. Humbled to be here and humbled to be a part of this amazing panel with Rebecca and Susan. I know it's a long day, so I really appreciate you hanging in here with me. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how do we get youth involved in these amazing green policy solutions that we've been talking about today. As a writer, as a community activist, as a community artist, it means a lot to me to connect and bring these solutions to youth across the city. So before we kind of get started, I actually wanted to start with a poem from one of my middle school students. So Write Out, we partner with community organizations all year round. I'm going to talk about that. But this summer, this was one of our students. He wrote a poem kind of on the theme of what makes a happy and healthy home. What makes a happy and healthy home. So this is We Diddy for Hope by Zach, 13. We Diddy for Hope. I walk outside and see a rotten, wounded, and inflicted world. I want to repair it, but I can't on my own. We are close to giving up, but we still dream of a repaired, ecstatic world. We are contradicted, and our hearts are icicles sometimes. The roots of hatred run deep, but we diddy for hope. We aspire for hope. We will sizzle for a better world. And I think that's maybe what we're doing today, is we're diddying for hope, we're aspiring for hope, and we are sizzling for a better world. Young people care about the environment. They care about the place that they are in, and they have stories to share, and we just have to be present enough to listen to them and to provide space for them to tell those stories. So what do we know? Young people will inherit our environmental failings. In the local context, we see that every day. We are grappling with these failures, the desecration of Onondaga Lake and high blood levels in our children, the 81 Viaduct students living right next to the highway and feeling the effects of air pollution. So they are going to inherit our failings, and as a result, they must be part of our solutions. We must start at a young age. Studies show that there's a correlation between youth nature engagement, kind of eco-engagement, and pro-environmental attitudes as an adult. So we want them to be here with us one day, right? We want them to be on this stage and on this the speaking platform, sharing their stories with us. So we have to invest in them at a young age. And we must diversify the environmental movement to facilitate inclusivity. What we also know is that the climate crisis is going to affect our most marginalized and vulnerable communities. So how do we connect with diverse youth at a young age to make sure that they feel a part of this movement and identify as a piece of it moving forward? So how to do that? 2 years ago, I started a grassroots organization in the city, Write Out. It is a community writing collective that partners local organizations, after-school programs, with youth-focused, with local artists and university students to do year-round community writing workshops. We hold a fall, spring, and summer program. When we go out to the community, we go out to these community centers. The thing that they need most is capacity. They need people. They need programming. They need these supplemental programs because they have dozens, hundreds of students in their spaces every day after school, waiting for their parents to pick them up, right? And so how do we get into these spaces and help the people who are doing the real work every day, these community leaders who are on the ground every day doing that? If we, as a higher education institute, as a grassroots organization, can go into the spaces and provide that supplemental education for that hour and a half, 2 hour break. At the floor, we're giving the organizers who are there every day an hour and a half, 2 hour break to catch their breath and continue to do the amazing work that they're doing. Since founded in 2020, we've worked with over 300 local students across 7 community sites. We have 30-plus facilitators at any one time, including university students and local artists and writers and government officials who go in and interact with the kids every single week. So what is our practice? What does it look like? We're going to kind of get into the details of our program. So our number one and most important piece of this is to build an inclusive and safe space for youth. So a lot of the youth we're working with, they're multilingual students, they're students, new Americans, first-generation immigrants, and so a lot of times their relationship to school is a relationship, and the relationship to storytelling and to writing is a relationship with a red pen. They're told very often that they are wrong. And as a result of being told that they are wrong in school, they are less likely to engage, they're less likely to tell their own stories, right? And so we want to go in and create a space where they feel comfortable sharing their stories, because they are storytellers, they are cultural agents already. They tell stories in the bus, they tell stories in the cafeteria, so how do we encourage them to continue to tell those stories and to think about this kind of shared environment that they find themselves in and to share the stories of their cultures and backgrounds? We want to deliver community-specific programming. So we work with diverse youth across the city, and their needs are very different, and the things that they're interested in are really, really different. So the kind of community-specific is broken into kind of 2 pieces. One is going into the space and thinking about what the students need and what their kind of levels are. We work at the La Casita Cultural Center. Most of the students there are bilingual Spanish-speaking students, so making sure that we have texts that are in both English and Spanish, making sure that we're engaging with their culture, making sure we're bringing in artists and local writers who speak Spanish to talk to them and engage with them, but also to deliver community-specific based on what they're interested in. Right? So this summer, Eduardo, all he wanted to do was write about dinosaurs. He loved Jurassic World. So all summer, all he did was write poems and stories about Jurassic World. That's fine, right? We're there to help facilitate those ideas and those stories. We're not there to get a product out of them. We're not there to get a kind of standardized test score afterwards. We're there to encourage those stories in wherever they're interested in. We want to co-design the curriculum with our nonprofit spaces. We work for these nonprofit spaces, these community spaces. And so we want to make sure that we're connecting their programs, their supplemental education. And the thing about writing and storytelling is that it's reactive and it's kind of malleable to any circumstance, right? You can kind of look at anything and be creative in response to it. And I'm going to talk about that in kind of the environmental context next. We want to encourage writing across languages and contexts. A lot of our multilingual students are not allowed to write in their multilingual identity in school, right? So we want to make sure that they feel comfortable being able to write across languages and contexts and tell stories in their languages. And then we want to publish and celebrate student work. Studies show that if students are creatively expressing themselves, they're more likely to engage in civic education in the future. So how do we get and celebrate the student work, and so that they feel comfortable being in spaces like this and presenting to a room like all of you? Balkisa, there at one of our readings. We always hold readings, and we publish chapbooks throughout the year. And so what does a session look like? So all of our sessions start with a shared experience and a discussion. That shared experience can be a text, but it also can be an experiential learning component. So last summer, we partnered with Syracuse Community Geography and a host of other environmental organizations to do experiential learning, and then we wrote in response to that experiential learning. So Shamsa is there. This is in Schiller Park. We did a foresting forage walk with the Syracuse University Urban Food Forest Project. It's long. It was great. And so they learned about mulberries, they learned about edible food forests in the neighborhood that they live in. And then we came back and we talked about that for a while. We talked about that experience. And then they wrote odes in response to objects that they saw across that day. So we kind of start with that experience, we start with that discussion, we have a writing prompt based on those experiences, practicing their storytelling. Facilitators encourage them. They try to make them turn a shoe into a red stiletto. How do we be more specific in our writing? How do we be more specific in our storytelling abilities? And we embrace the tangent and talk. We are an after-school program. We are a supplementary education program. So how do we make writing fun, right? And sometimes students are going to come and they're not going to really want to write that day. And that's totally okay, right? It's about relationships. It's about making them feel comfortable in the space, so maybe they'll write again next week, right? And we want to share out and celebrate the work at the end of every single session. So we're really excited about this next year. We have a year-long exploration of eco-writing that is planned. We're coordinating right now with middle and high school students from 3 separate community centers across the city: the La Casita Cultural Center, Northside Learning Center, and YWCA Girls Inc. And we're actually we have a small grant to bus all those students in to the MOST, which is the kind of Museum of Science and Technology downtown. The curriculum is going to be designed around local environmental issues and highlighted by the various museum exhibits. Students will then write creatively in reaction to those shared lessons, and it'll end with a publication and traveling art display. And that'll be weekly, starting in October, stretching all the way to May. So how do you support these kind of community-engaged projects? One is to aid existing programs. Like I said, these community sites, there are already people there. They're looking for capacity. So go where populations already are. Sometimes when people think about youth-engaged projects, they want to bring them to one space or create a new thing, but there's youth out there already. The Syracuse Parks and Rec has 7 community centers in their parks, right? And they're kind of dying for supplemental programming. So go where populations already are. Build and connect community resources, share resources, increase capacity, and then kind of supporting some of those program logistics too: transportation, food, assessment. How do you make these programs better? Because young people have to be part of this experience. They have to be part of these green policy solutions for the future. And I hope that we continue this conversation and that you think about youth going forward. And like Zach said, I hope you continue to Diddy for hope and to sizzle for a better world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jacob. I think we have some time for a few questions, if there are any out there. Oh.
Hi, my name's Caitlin. I'm with the town of Manlius. I'm a town councilor, and mine is less of a question and more just words of encouragement. We became the first climate smart community in Onondaga County, and that was the result of a recent high school graduate, Ryan Dunn. He came to our first sustainability meeting in 2020 after I was elected in 2019, said that our town should be a climate smart community. He was a senior in high school. I made him community chair, and 2 years later, we were the first climate smart community. So engaging with youth, empowering youth. I watched him grow in front of me from being afraid to send emails to emailing me, Caitlin, you were supposed to do this. You said you were going to do this, and holding me accountable. So I would encourage everyone to don't be afraid to work with youth. They're smart, they're engaged, they're capable, and then they learn and then they grow. So it's really very symbiotic. And without him, we would not have achieved it. So I would encourage everyone to reach out to your high schools, local colleges, and get youth involved in your community. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on what you said. As a result of lobbying by our youth, I created a Mayor's Climate Youth Council where they get together and tell me what they think is important, and it's essential. They're the ones who are going to be dealing with whatever policies we put in place now. They're going to be dealing with those policies down the line, and they come up with amazing things. Some of the things are outrageously ambitious, and so there's a cost element that one has to consider, but even the conversations are really useful for me and very inspiring. So I think it's fantastic that you got spurred on by youth, and we should all be spurred on by youth. So thank you for that work.
So my question is on procurement, but outside of like departments buying paper, are there, can you impact what gets brought in the building with the concept of at some point it's going to go back the other way? What we will take in here because it can be recycled or it is easily sorted, as opposed to things that no one knows what to do with?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great question. So that really is what it's all about. We can try to get people to properly sort at the end of the day, but the damage has been done if the product has been brought to campus and purchased already. So something that we really have had a lot of luck is that we have a student body who loves to sort through trash and recycling and compost. So we do, one of our student clubs is monthly waste audits, and they categorize the largest contaminants and the things that we think we can reduce out of our material stream first and foremost. So that data, they publicly display it by the cafe. So that's one way that we are challenging our campus to rethink what we bring to campus. And one of my first projects my boss told me I had to do was get campus-wide composting and get our bins standardized. So what we did is we took the traditional trash cans out of everyone's offices, and we gave them a mini bin that's as big as my head, and it has no liner. And we told them, by the way, the custodial staff are going to pick them up once a week, and they're not going to wash them. So you have to compost, and you have to rethink what you're bringing to campus. So we're trying to force some behavior changes in that way. And through getting people on board and making green procurement easy for them, it's so much more than paper. The biggest challenge we have is honestly our lab materials, because there just isn't a lot of durable or recycled content because it has to be a lot of it sterile in nature. So even through us, that's why I love working at ESF. We're a small campus, but we're part of the SUNY system, which is part of New York State. And part of being with this green purchasing guide, I've gotten to work a lot with OGS, with DEC, and with other state agencies to directly be able to suggest changes that should happen at a state level. Like, I would love to see if someone wants to have a state procurement contract, you need to do the work to make it easy. You need to do the work to source products that meet our goals. We need to get a lot more stringent and tough with who we accept on state contract, in my humble opinion. So yes, that's a great question. Thank you.
I think we have time for one more.
On the youth, real quickly, I'll just mention my nephew. I'm very proud of him. He got his Eagle Badge, and he did a solar project for his Eagle Badge on a park in Kingston, New York. And it is now what they advertise for Solarize Ulster. The mayor of Kingston actually is a graduate of ESF. So I'm hoping someday, Mark, maybe you can bring him up here to give a talk. And it would have been nice to have actually heard him here, especially since he's an ESF grad. But a question about youth involvement with governing is, I know that many counties in New York State have environmental management councils. Onondaga doesn't have one anymore. They used to. And I'm wondering how many, and when I was growing up, our county did have a youth council, a youth legislature, in fact. Are there any counties in New York State that anyone's aware of that has a youth environmental council at the county level that provides input to the county legislature? And then that way, the legislature, has a formatted and official way to listen to what the kids have to say.
Well, I am unaware of such council, but other people might have better knowledge on that. I know there are two initiatives that are kind of civically engaged in the city, trying to get youth connected to these to kind of local government officials. One, Syracuse Northside Speech and Debate. It kind of started as a speech and debate team, but really it was about a group of students on the north side at the Northside Learning Center who wanted to have their opinions heard at city council, and so they were practicing their speeches to go to city council meetings to talk. So that's one example. And then I know SOFSA, the Syracuse Onondaga Food Systems Alliance, they're working right now to create a youth council around food. So that's another opportunity for youth, but I'm not sure about large structural youth based programs across the county or city.
Well, thank you very much, Rebecca, Susan, and Jacob, for bringing your attention to great ways to get all communities engaged. Thank you.